Hi everyone, my name's Brydie. I am the social media director of MedMentors, and I'm also a final year medical student. And this is Emma, who is our founder and president. Today we have for you another example of what not to do in your medical interview, as well as a nice contrasting video of how we think a question should be answered. Today's topic is an ethical one, so talking about an ethical scenario and how you would deal with it. So without further ado, let's get stuck in.
So today's question. You are a mentor at MedMentors and have just watched a peer upload a day in the life video to the MedMentors Instagram. You've noticed that during part of the video, there is a patient laying in their hospital bed in the background. Discuss the ethical issues that arise in this scenario.
Well, so for me, obviously, a major issue in this scenario is that it's gone on Instagram. So there's a picture of a patient on Instagram, and obviously you need to not breach confidentiality. So that person has obviously done that.
All right, your next follow-up question is, what would you do in this situation?
So obviously I would tell the student that did it that that's not on, and that you can't be breaching confidentiality like that, because obviously doctors are not supposed to be sharing patient information. And then I would go pretty much directly to the clinical school and tell them what had happened, because obviously they need to sort of get in a bit of trouble. The university sort of needs to take a punitive approach, or else the student, they just won't take it seriously.
All right, and your last follow-up question, if the patient was a close personal friend of the student who uploaded the video, would this change what you would do?
Yeah, it would completely change the situation, because obviously if it's a friend, they probably said yes, that's totally fine, that they can upload that video. And if they weren't in hospital, they could still be putting a video, you put a video of your friend on Instagram without asking their consent necessarily. So I think that's, I don't really see an issue there, unless the patient / friend was really no, don't do it.
All right, thank you.
So obviously I'm not a very ethically inclined student in this scenario, and I don't have a great understanding of how to deal with the situation in an ethical way. While I did throw in the buzzwords of confidentiality, I didn't really explain anything about what that meant, and I didn't elaborate on how the student had breached the confidentiality of the patient, although it was pretty obvious. I also didn't handle the situation very well. Then when I was asked if it was okay because it was the patient's friend, I actually took the wrong approach. In summary, it was a pretty bad answer from me, but we'll see what Emma has to say.
So I think the thing that stuck out as the interviewer was the lack of depth in your answers. The interview is going to go very fast, and we only have 5 or so minutes depending on what school you're at. And we got through that very quickly. I think you would have ended up with a lot of time left over that was wasted. So it would be good to hear more depth in your answers. Again, you mentioned the breaching confidentiality sort of buzzwords, but you're right, you didn't really link it into what was happening or how it was breached or what the implications of that breach to the patient might be. All of that would be really important for us to discuss in a station like this. And then I think skipping right ahead to the end where you went to the clinical school or whoever it was to sort of rat on this student and take punitive measures, that's probably a red flag for a lot of medical schools. They want to see that you are ethical and you're able to sort of resolve conflict with other peers and people in the hospital without just jumping to conclusions. They want to see that you're going to be safe, you're going to be able to talk to people. So it would have been great if we had heard a little bit more about wanting to approach that student and speaking to them, or even med mentors themselves, and seeing what we could do to fix the situation before just jumping straight to the clinical school, which is of course always an option, but maybe not the first stepping point. You are a mentor at MedMentors and have just watched a peer upload a day in the life video to the MedMentors Instagram, and you've noticed that during part of the video there is a patient laying in their hospital bed in the background. Discuss the ethical issues that arise in this scenario.
So in this scenario, I identify one main ethical issue, and that is the breach of confidentiality that's occurred by this student uploading a video where a patient is in the background. However, that has far-reaching implications, and there are a few stakeholders in this situation. So just to quickly run through them. Firstly, we have the student that uploaded the video who's now effectively breached confidentiality and could have some serious action taken against them by the patient, by the hospital, or by the clinical school, and rightly so, because the patient is now in a vulnerable position. The second person is, of course, the patient, who has presumably not consented to having their video uploaded to an Instagram where they could potentially be viewed by a whole range of different people, and maybe even someone they know who doesn't know they're in hospital. And that's a really horrible way for someone to have to find out that their relative's in hospital. And this person absolutely hasn't consented to being broadcasted. So what that could do in the medium and long term is really undermine the patient's trust in the healthcare system and in healthcare students. Thirdly, there's me. And now I'm in a position where I've seen this breach of confidentiality, and now I really need to take action on it. And more broadly, it reflects poorly on MedMentors. Finally, everyone else that sees the video is ultimately going to have their trust immediately undermined, because they no longer feel as though their relationship with the healthcare team is private, because they feel as though they can just be filmed and put out there for everyone to see. And really, if the trust in a doctor is undermined, then people aren't going to be forthcoming about their health conditions, and this can have some really serious ramifications. So as I mentioned, confidentiality is the main issue here.
Great. Your first follow-up question is, what would you do in this situation?
So as a matter of urgency, the first thing that I would do would be to contact whoever had control of the MedMentors social media and ask them to remove the video to minimize the amount of people who see it. The next thing that I would do would be to approach the individual who had taken the video and just let them know that they had done it. It was very possibly an accident, and I'd want to have a really open discussion with them and to hear their thoughts and to, I guess, warn them that what they had done was a pretty serious ethical breach. If they took that well, I would suggest with them that we don't take it any further, but I'd want to encourage them to openly disclose to the patient that they had done that and have that conversation with the patient. I'm certain that the patient would be disappointed, but they would be much happier to know that the video had been removed and that the error had been rectified than to have found out the hard way. It would potentially also be worth raising or escalating with the hospital staff and through maybe a risk management system, just so the hospital's aware in case there are any further ramifications of that video being uploaded. And finally, if the student wasn't receptive to my advice, it may be worth escalating to the clinical school, as it's a serious ethical breach to breach someone's confidentiality. And as I mentioned earlier, it has serious ramifications for individuals and the public's trust in the healthcare system. But I would hope by having a conversation with the person involved that we could reach an agreement on the fact that what they did was potentially unethical and move forward from there.
Great. And your last follow-up question, if the patient was a close personal friend of the student who uploaded the video, would this change what you would do?
No, it wouldn't change what I would do, because at the end of the day, confidentiality still stands. Medical students in general probably shouldn't be treating their friends anyway, and that's an ethical concern in and of itself. However, unless the patient had explicitly consented, and I'd probably even want that on paper, unless the patient had explicitly consented, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that situation, and I would encourage the students still to remove the video. I think it reflects poorly on the organisation of MedMentors, and the public that are watching the video wouldn't be aware of that conversation about consenting to have the video uploaded. So if they were unaware of that, it would still really undermine their trust in medical students and the medical system more generally. So I think whilst having the conversation with the student, I would let them know that I'm aware it's their friend, but I don't think it would change my response to the situation overwhelmingly.
Okay, great.
I hope you're all able to see a contrast between the first and second interviews there. In the second answer, I was able to elaborate a lot more on what I meant. And I also used a stakeholders approach, which ran through all the different people who I perceived to be involved in the situation. And what that did show is it's more than just the people who are immediately involved, so that I'm conscious of the ramifications of unethical behaviour on not just the individuals involved, but on society and the public as a whole. What I did do wrong was I brought up this thing called Riskman, which is the risk management system of a hospital. So just be wary not to be using any terminology that your interviewers might not be familiar with. That's on me. Now we'll hand over to Emma and see what advice she has for me.
I think you can really see the difference in depth between these two answers. This is sort of the bar that you should be setting yourself when you're practicing with your peers. If somebody's telling you that your depth is not enough, maybe come back and have a look at the difference between these two videos and really see what you can add, no matter what the question. And I think the ethical situation here was addressed really well. We went into a lot of different stakeholders as we had gone through. I think as a medical school, they're going to really be excited to hear an answer like this, because it already sounds like you're going to be really responsible and safe student. You're not going to be a danger or a headache for them. You're going to be really respectful of everybody that's involved and everybody's personal stakes that are at risk in this situation, from the student to the patient to the clinical school to the broader community. I think that was a really excellent answer. Well done, Brydie.
Great. Well, once again, thanks for watching. We hope this helped answer any questions you might have about how to deal with a confidentiality type scenario. If in doubt, always ensure confidentiality. That would be my main advice. So any questions, feel free to leave a comment, like, subscribe. If you have any feedback, leave a comment, let us know what you think, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. What am I trying to say? I should have written a note. I was just really into what you were saying and I didn't write any of my own notes. I'll wait till you're done with your hair.
Sniffing my hair.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Oh, my hands.